Well, good morning everyone and welcome to what we call the Crunchies. So this is a particular combination that's been developed, and Guaxara did start off by going on YouTube and checking out other people's granola recipes. So it's a form of granola, and she's begun by putting heat on and by adding some jumbo oats. So this is like the foundation of this dish. And the thing about oats is that they are not just a food, they're also a herb, a medicinal herb. And the main quality about oats is that they are calming. And in the times we're living these days, there are a few things better than to start off with something that calms the gut, because as we know, the gut involves the brain and therefore it helps in all levels. And now she's adding the pumpkin seeds. Now this is where we start to turn this into a omega-3 feast, because we're going to be putting so many different ingredients in, and they're all going to be rich in omega-3s, and these fatty acids are so good for neurogenesis and keeping the brain healthy. And now she's adding sunflower seeds, and these are particularly rich in zinc. In fact, so are the pumpkin seeds, come to that. And what I invite you to do, if you want to find out more about these different seeds, like the sunflower seeds or the pumpkin seeds, go and do your own research and find out what they contain, and you will be amazed, because what we have here is the beginnings of a very powerful nutritional supplement in its own right. And as I think you know, I prefer as much as possible not to take pills, and much more to use natural food sources. And so what she's doing, this is called dry roasting. So you've got a reasonable heat underneath. Now it depends on what you're using. We are in a situation where we need to use electricity where we live now, so we have to start off with a high heat and then gradually turn it down. But if you're using gas, you wouldn't need to start quite so high, because it's much more responsive. And if you're lucky enough to cook on a wood fire, then you have the pleasure of being able to regulate that for yourself. So that's what's happening, is these different things that we're putting in are being dry roasted. So now here come the almonds. Now the wonderful thing about an almond is when you look at it, it's literally, sorry, it's not an almond at all, it's a walnut. What am I thinking? And the thing about the walnuts is they literally look like brains. If you take half a walnut, you can see it just looks like the cerebral hemispheres of the human brain. And this is what we call in magic the doctrine of signatures, which means that we find that the shape of something in the form of a plant has got a relation to something to do with the human form. And so literally walnuts are brain food, and yes, that's right, they're also rich in the omega-3s. So this is really a neurogenesis mixture we're creating, whereby if you're having this on a regular basis, this is actually going to help to reverse any signs of cognitive decline and bring you into a position where you become smarter, brighter in the mind, and feeling more fully alive and full of vitality. And those omega oils, those fatty acids, of course, are extremely nourishing for the nervous system, which is really great. So she's broken up the walnuts there into slightly smaller pieces and continuing to dry roast. So the principle of dry roasting is the heat underneath and then the gradual stirring, just the mixing up. And so there we continue. And the other thing I'd like to say to you is that when it comes to minerals, there are so many minerals that benefit the body. And the great thing about using seeds in your food, and it's obvious when you think about it, because a seed actually contains all the nutrients that that plant is going to need to be able to start to grow to be a new plant. So that means that they are naturally very rich in what's essential for life. So that's a really great thing about working with seeds. And now we're going to come to one of my favorites. This is the hemp seed. Now, unlike all the others, well, let me correct myself, actually, the same as all the others, what we've done is the shell has been taken off. So these can be called dehulled. That's one of the names they use. So when you buy hemp seeds in a shop, they're often sold with the shells on, but you want to make sure you get the ones without the shells. And as I say, they're called dehulled. So by using the seeds without the shell, that means that we've got immediate access to the seeds when we start to chew them. And the hemp seeds contain the most ideal balance of omegas 3, 6s and 9s for the body, very important. And now we're adding the sesame seed, and you can see my link to the film How to Make Gamazzi, which is made purely from sesame seeds. And one of the things about sesame seeds that's so helpful, apart from the calcium they contain, is they contain copper. And copper is one of these minerals that's really important for the blood. We tend to think of iron as being important for the blood, and it certainly is, but copper is needed in really small amounts too. So this is a very great gift to make sure you've got some sesame seeds in your mix. And by now, because I'm being quiet, you might hear it. You can hear the first sound of the seeds popping, which means that the dry roasting process is working well. And I think that's been particularly obvious just the moment that she added the sesame seeds. Now the thing when you've actually made this is you can consume it in so many ways. One of the great advantages of the Crunchies is you can take them with you if you're travelling. You can take a little pot of the Crunchies, and it means if you get hungry you've got something that's really high nutrition, very valuable, very good for the nervous system and the brain, and you can eat them anywhere, and you can eat them just as they are. Although there are other ways you can eat them. So now what Guaxara is doing is she's turning down the heat as a response to hearing the popping and crackling sound that the seeds are now making. And you can see they do get quite a fair bit of movement. And this is just to make sure that the heat is evenly distributed throughout those roasting seeds. So one of the questions is, why do we actually bother to roast seeds in the first place? And to be frank, if you have a really strong dentition, that means your teeth, if your teeth are incredibly strong, you've never been exposed to refined sugar, and you've got very, very powerful teeth, then you wouldn't even need to do this. But for the vast majority of people today, we've been through the Western diet and we're coming out of that and exploring what's much better for us to eat. And our teeth are not as strong as they would have been if we had not eaten the dodgy junk food. So it really helps to roast these seeds because it means they're easier for us to chew. Therefore the nutrients and minerals and the omega oils are more accessible to us. So that's a really good reason. And the other thing is it does actually affect the flavour. And the flavour when seeds are roasted in this manner is absolutely delicious. And there's also something to do with the point about cooking. I'm greatly in favour of cookery because cookery is a form of alchemy. And so what we're doing is we're exposing these seeds to the alchemy of particularly two elements. We've got the element of fire, obviously from the heat underneath, and also the element of time. So that's what we're working with, fire and time. And then a third element is the element of movement, of agitation. And when I'm watching this, it does remind me very much what it's like if a builder is making mortar to be able to do bricklaying or making concrete. And it's the mixing and the blending of the ingredients that causes it to transform into something quite different. And now we have another ingredient. This doesn't go in all ways, but in more recent times Guaxara is very keen to add raisins to the mix. And I think it's a wonderful idea. In fact, actually there's a mixture of raisins and sultanas in there, which makes it even better. So the thing about these dried fruits is that they are rich in iron, and iron is another mineral that's important for us to have. I mean, some of the seeds also contain iron too. So my main point really is you're getting such a wide mixture of all different minerals that the body needs. And the other thing about adding these dried fruits is it then gives us an increased sense of sweetness, and it means that the Crunchies are a very useful thing to have if you're in the process of coming off refined sugar. So if you made a decision a while ago that you wanted to reduce or cut out refined sugar from your diet because you realise it's not good for the brain and your cognitive abilities and the heart and so many other things, then it would be a really good idea to add some raisins, some dried fruit, and that is going to increase the sweetness, which is going to mean that that desire for sweetness which we have got from having been habituated to refined sugar, its presence, not in the same way, but in a much more helpful way. And at first when we make the shift, we do find these things a bit more difficult to adjust to, but with time, oh, that's now, can you hear the sound? The sound is a different sound. The sound you heard before was the sound of the sesame seeds popping, which is a very different sound from what that was. That was the sound of the pumpkin seeds popping. Now finally, the magical ingredient we're choosing to add is called coconut nectar. Now coconut nectar is a rich, deep orangey brown colour, and that tells me that it's got a lot of iron in it, and it starts to make a completely different sound now. And now Guaxara starts to really mix all these in together. So it's very much a process of listening to the different sounds. That's something very satisfying about making the growing over the crunchies. And now I'm starting to notice that the colour of the whole mix is changing as the coconut nectar is mixing and blending with all those seeds and dried fruits, and it's starting to have the colour it ends up with, which is a beautiful kind of golden brown colour. Now coconut nectar we highly favour, and there's just one of many sweeteners you could use. You could also, especially if you wanted a lot of iron, you could use molasses instead. Something else you could use is malt extract. Then again you could use rice syrup. Another possibility would be maple syrup. You could even use honey. And it will depend on where you live and what is accessible to you as to which of the one that you use, and also which one you find the most enjoyable. But this is certainly our preference, and there we are. It's literally taken just over 11 minutes to do this, and the process is now completed. So she's simply putting them into the bowl, and that is complete. And the thing is, when you look at them and you can see the way she's moving them, the first thing you might say, well, that doesn't look at all crunchy. And I would agree with you, because in fact at the moment I would call them the softies, because they are indeed very, very soft, all these seeds and dried fruits. But when they cool down, they will harden to such an extent that they will form a solid lump, and it will be necessary then, when you want to get them out of your bowl, to use a knife or a spoon to actually break them out. And when it comes to using them, apart from taking them with you as a snack and eating them exactly as they are, something, and I'll just give you an example here. So this is a batch that she's made earlier, and there they are. That's in a little plastic tub, and you can hear they really are crunchy, and they really have formed into a solid lump. So you can certainly eat them as they are. And the other thing you can do is you can add like a milk to them, like you could add oat milk, hemp milk, whatever kind of milk you like, and then add a load of fruit and make them into a kind of a muesli. That's something else that you could do. The other thing you can do is you could get some fresh fruit like apples and blackberries, or apples and pears, whatever, and you could cook them to make what people call stewed fruit, or the French call it compote, and then you can sprinkle some crunches on top. That's also a delicious way you can work with them, so you can make them into a dessert, into a breakfast, or into an anytime snack. So thanks very much for coming on this journey with us, and enjoy making your crunchies. Thank you very much. Bye bye.